Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about the book that I was listening to on audio about a week ago and that I've already finished up. I never thought that I was going to pick this book up. I thought I was already past the phase. Whenever I had pre-ordered it, I did it more for nostalgic reasons. It came out a couple years ago and I wanted to put it with, you know, my collection that I already had because let's face it, at one point in my life, I absolutely adored these books, loved them. I have since found books that are obviously much better in, you know, the genre that it's in. And so I wanted to kind of talk to you about how my life really spiraled whenever I started listening to this on audio, because I thought it was just going to be a put it in the background, just kind of listen to it faintly because I'd already heard the story, and I was honestly surprised. So the book is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. So this book is the first book, Twilight, from Edward's point of view. Now, what I did not expect was to actually really like this book in a sense, because I had my Twilight days. I'm sure most of you have already had your Twilight days as well. We all can agree to disagree if, you know, it's a great book or if it's not. I think that, you know, in the time that it was written, if you enjoyed it, if it really, you know, connected with you, and then you were one of those that went to the movies and the midnight premieres and all of that, it sticks with you. You have a little soft spot for it in your heart, whether you want to admit it or not, because, you know, at the time that these books came out, they were really good. I, you know, was in high school or fresh out of high school whenever the first one came out. So it really targeted, you know, kind of my age range at the time, and it did it well. It did it well. And then I continued reading them as she came out with them. And then, of course, I watched the movies, went to all the premieres. I own all of the books. I own all of the novellas and the graphic novels. You name it, I was a Twilight fan. And then I, you know, haven't really watched the movies or picked up the books at all in at least 6 years, 7 years, possibly even more than that. I don't even remember whenever Breaking Dawn came out, the movies, but that was really the last time that I watched it. So Midnight Sun was supposed to come out many years ago, but somebody on Stephanie's team, I don't know if it was like an editor or, you know, something like that, but they leaked the first, you know, few chapters or so many pages of the book, and she felt betrayed and just didn't want to write the book. And I'm so thankful that she got back onto it and wrote it and came out with it. Now, whenever it first came out, I thought it was going to be all, because it's such a big book, I thought that it was going to be all of the main parts of all of the books, you know, just from Edward's point of view, kind of just mashed up, like in not really a diary sense, but kind of in that feel. But it actually ended up being just the first book from his point of view. Now, I really hope that she doesn't continue on with all of the books from his point of view, because I feel like Midnight Sun did its job, but I don't feel like we need that level of Edward's perspective. So Twilight was very YA, told from Bella's point of view, and of course, you know, you get Bella's perspective on everything. You don't know what Edward's thinking or what he's going through, and, you know, sometimes you probably wonder, like, is it really that hard for him to be around Bella? Is it really that hard? Because, like, it doesn't seem as convincing. If you just watch the movies, it really doesn't seem that convincing. But in the first book, it even still doesn't seem as convincing. And so I read Midnight Sun. Well, I guess I listened to it on audio, but that's still reading. So I'm listening to it, and there were times that I, you know, was just stopping what I was doing at work or, you know, around the house or something, and just had to pause for a second, because Edward's side is very adult and very gritty and very, not PG. Like, I didn't realize that Edward thought every other sentence in his head, I hope I don't kill Bella. Like, I didn't realize that. So, getting his perspective on the whole book and how everything played out for him, and especially whenever Bella wasn't around in Twilight, I always wondered, what is Edward doing? Right? Like, what do vampires do in their downtime? And so you get that. You get him interacting with Carlisle. You get him interacting with Emmett and Jasper, and, them going hunting and what they talk about. And, you just get so much more in depth, not just about Edward, but about the whole Cullen family. And that is one thing that I absolutely loved, because, it really kind of brought Twilight, in a sense, full circle for me. So I started listening to it on a Monday at work. I was scrolling through my Audibles and I was like, what am I going to listen to? It's going to be the last week that I really get to listen to any books, before my busy time hits. And I just kind of want a read where I'm not having to focus on what's going on or the story around it. And so I put on Midnight Sun, and I want to say within the first hour of listening, I was like, oh, this is good. Okay. And then it started bringing back all of those feelings that I had whenever I very first read Twilight and New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn, because as I'm listening to his side of things for the first book, I'm thinking in the future, like, oh, well, this is how this ties in here, and this is how this ties in here. And, I just got enveloped into the world again. And so I came home Monday night and I was like, wow, I'm really in the Twilight mood now. Like, it just brought me back. It brought me back to all of the characters and the world and everything that I loved about it. Now, granted, it's been 10 years since the last one came out, 11 years, something like that. And granted, back then it would have hit me a lot differently. Okay, I may not have felt the way that I do, or maybe I would have, but maybe at a higher level. But I appreciate this book and this world and series that Stephenie Meyer had created a lot more in a different light. I appreciate it in the fact that it was, groundbreaking at the time. It really brought a lot of readers to the reading community that didn't necessarily read a lot of books at the time, but then fell in love with Twilight and then just spiraled from there. There are people out there that probably will never admit to it, that they stayed up late at night reading these books, binging on them and stuff, because there's such a stigma, around the Twilight books about how it's so bad and written so poorly. And, Bella's character is just someone that, is not someone you can relate to. And, you could find a million different things about these books that you don't like, or that have since came out better in the series or in that world, that maybe you like vampires more because of this series or that series, or you like paranormal romance in general and have found other books that are good. I can even tell you one right now, Shadow Kissed by Rebecca Garcia. It is not the exact same story or anything, not even close, but it deals with vampires, it deals with romance, it deals with, having to fight off people and just all of these different things. So granted, I think Rebecca Garcia's world now, for me being 36 years old, I think that, it's a much better paranormal romance, way better, vampires. I mean, who wants a vampire that sparkles, right? Like, now at the time, it's so cringy, but at that time in my life, I don't care who you are, Twilight was my thing. And I'm sure it was everyone's thing at one point in time, whether you read only one book or you read the whole series, it doesn't matter. At one point, it held your attention. And so Stephenie Meyer sought out to do that, sought out to bring readers, into the YA genre, the paranormal romance genre, in a whole different light. And she really did that well, honestly. She did it well. I can't deny that. Midnight Sun is done well. I am so happy I got Edward's point of view. I'm so happy that I was able to hear his thoughts and see what he was doing, because it really brought it full circle for me. So how did my life spiral from then? So here's what happened. I started on Monday and I was gripped. I couldn't stop. I came home. I was talking to my husband about it. He is not for Twilight, but the funny thing is it got us talking about whenever him and I first got together. We got together in 2011. We met in a very unconventional way. We met on Xbox, and so we flew back and forth to see each other for a couple years. And in 2012, Breaking Dawn Part 2 came out, and it was in theaters. And this was the very first time my husband was ever meeting me physically in person, okay? And so we had met, and then a couple days later, we went on our first actual date, okay? We dated in a sense on Xbox, whereas, you know, back then on the 360 you could go into a private chat where no one else could hear you, and we would like watch Game of Thrones, or we would watch I think it was True Blood at the time. We did a lot of things like that, you know, where it was just him and I. So that was kind of our dates. Now we're physically in person. We go and see Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 because he knows that I love it. And we're sitting there, we're watching, I'm loving it. I'm, you know, just devoured. And then it gets to the very ending, and all of a sudden you have that Alice's vision. And I don't remember if it happens in the book or not at this point, but at the time, everyone was being slaughtered, Carlisle's killed, all this stuff is going on, and then I stand up. It's only him and I. It's like midnight at this movie theater, and it's on a weekday, so there's like no one there, and I stand up and I just go, that did not happen in the book. No, I'm leaving. That does not happen. Carlisle isn't dead. Like, I was just upset, okay? And that is where I was at in my life with Twilight. That is how profoundly affected I was. So I do this. My husband's probably like, who is this person? This is our first actual date in person. And so we started laughing about that, and, you know, how that was kind of our first date. And, you know, it was quite a doozy. So, you know, at the time it did what it was supposed to do, but with it, I was so, I'm trying to gather my words because honestly, I've been in a whirlwind this past week. So Tuesday, I had came home. I'm already almost done with the book at this point on audio. And I was like, I really want to watch Twilight. I'm just like in my Twilight feels right now because, you know, Edward's point of view has really brought things to light for me and, you know, really made me want to go back. So my husband watched Twilight with me Tuesday night, and it just hit all of the right places. And then I didn't realize how much the book differs from the movie in a sense of when Bella confronts him, you know, about what she knows that he is, and, you know, like some of their interactions and things. Like, I didn't realize Hollywood had changed a lot of the scenes so profoundly until I did that. And so I watched Twilight, and then I was still in it the next day, so we watched New Moon on Wednesday night, and then Thursday we didn't watch anything because my husband was donating that night. And then Friday night we watched Eclipse, and then Saturday came, and I had already finished the audiobook. Well, I mean, I had like an hour left in it, and we watched Breaking Dawn Part 1, and then I begged him. I said, can you please just put Part 2 on right now? And so he ended up putting Part 2 on. We just watched Part 1 and Part 2 back to back, and it just wrapped up my week, and I felt so good because I was like, I kind of was starting to get into a reading slump. I was looking forward to my busy season where I wasn't going to be reading as much, but after this week of revisiting Twilight, revisiting Forks, and the world of the Cullens and the Quileutes and all of them, I just love them. I'm so happy that I did that. I can't believe it took me over 2 years to read this book because it came out in like August of 2020. But yeah, I am so happy. So any of you out there that are watching this video and are telling me that, you know, I'm crazy or ridiculous or why would you revisit that world? It wasn't good. I would agree with you, okay? It was not good. There were a lot of things that could have been written better, you know, all that stuff. But let's talk about it as a whole. It gives you the feels. It makes you want to watch it. Your team Edward or your team Jacob. Like, I realize that maybe I'm more team Jacob as I get older than I was, you know, team Edward back then. But don't sit here and tell me that you did not have a Twilight moment, because everybody did at one point in their life if they have read any paranormal romance. You know, even if it's just reading part of it or watching the movie, you had it. So Stephenie Meyer really did a good job. If we were ever to revisit this story and, you know, all of the people involved, I really hope that she comes out, even if it's a novella, just give us something for what happens afterwards. Like, give us Renesmee and Jacob's story, okay? I'm here for that. Tell me what happens to Leah. Does Leah ever imprint on anybody? Because I feel for that girl. I do. You know, tell me what happens with Charlie and, you know, what was her name? The girl that he ended up, Sue. Tell me what happens with Charlie and Sue. Tell me what happens to Bella and Edward. I want to know. I just want a little novella. Just give me something. Tell me about Renesmee. Tell me about Jacob. Tell me about their story. I just want more, okay? Like, that's how I feel right now. If we were to revisit this place, please give me that, okay? So that was my book. Hope you guys loved my rant. You probably won't agree with it. Maybe you will. Maybe you are just like me and read Twilight, you know, 10, 15 years ago, and it held a point in your life and held your heart hostage for a brief period in time. Maybe it didn't. But just let me know down below. Have you read Midnight Sun? Have you read the Twilight series? Have you just watched the movies? What have you dabbled in with Twilight? 'Cause I want to know how deep you went, because I went deep. I will tell you that. I literally read everything Stephenie Meyer brought out with Twilight. I was just like, give me more. Yes. Okay. So anyway, leave me a comment. Let me know. I want to know if I'm the only crazy Twilight fan out there in 2022. Tell me if you were a Twilight fan back then and you read Midnight Sun. Did it give you the same vibes? Did you spiral like I did? Because I spiraled. Definitely like this video. Definitely subscribe. Visit me over on my Instagram. Let's talk, because I got a lot more, you know, books that have came out that I've read, and I just want to talk about them. So definitely like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, check out my Goodreads, you know, reviews down below. And until next time, everyone, I will see you later. Bye.